Most people don't lack confidence, they leak it through over-explaining, through seeking approval, through trying too hard to be liked. But there's a level of confidence so rare, so controlled, that it doesn't just attract people, it intimidates them. And the scary part, the moment you reach it, people will start treating you differently. Some will respect you, others will feel uncomfortable around you because real confidence isn't loud. Confidence is built in silence, not validation. Most people misunderstand this completely. They believe confidence comes from being seen, being praised, being approved of by others. So they constantly look outward, waiting for reassurance to confirm their worth. They speak more than necessary, explain more than required, and seek reactions to feel secure. But the truth is, every time you depend on validation, you weaken your sense of self. Because now your confidence is no longer yours. It belongs to the people whose approval you are chasing, and people are inconsistent. Their opinions change, their attention shifts, and when that validation disappears, so does your confidence. That's why so many people feel strong one moment and insecure the next. Their foundation was never internal to begin with. Silence, on the other hand, forces you to face yourself. It removes the noise, the applause, the distractions, and leaves you alone with your thoughts, your insecurities, and your doubts. This is where real confidence begins, not when you are being praised, but when no one is watching and you still choose to believe in yourself. When you continue working without announcing it, improving without showcasing it, and growing without needing others to notice. In silence, you stop performing and start becoming. You are no longer trying to prove anything, which means your actions become more authentic and grounded. This is what makes silent confidence so powerful. It doesn't rely on external feedback, so it cannot be easily shaken. There is also a certain discipline that comes with silent confidence. It requires patience because you are no longer chasing immediate recognition. You understand that real growth takes time, and you are willing to stay committed even when there is no reward in sight. This patience builds emotional strength. You learn to tolerate discomfort, to handle uncertainty, and to trust your own process. While others are seeking quick validation, you are building something deeper and more stable. And over time, this difference becomes visible. People who rely on validation tend to fluctuate. They rise when praised and fall when criticized. But someone who has built confidence in silence remains steady. Their self-worth is not tied to opinions, so it doesn't collapse under pressure. Another aspect of silent confidence is control. When you are not dependent on validation, you become harder to influence. People cannot manipulate you through praise or criticism because your sense of self is not negotiable. You are not easily impressed and you are not easily discouraged. This creates a quiet authority in your presence. You don't need to assert dominance or demand respect because your stability speaks for itself. Others begin to notice that you are different, not because you are louder, but because you are unaffected. This can be unsettling for people who are used to controlling others through approval. They don't know how to read you, and that unpredictability adds to your strength. Silence also sharpens your awareness. When you are not constantly seeking validation, you start observing more. You notice patterns in people's behavior, the inconsistency in their words, and the motives behind their actions. This awareness protects you from unnecessary emotional reactions. You stop taking things personally because you understand that most people act based on their own insecurities and needs. This detachment is a key part of confidence. It allows you to remain calm in situations where others would react impulsively. And that calmness is often mistaken for strength, when in reality it is the result of not being emotionally dependent on external opinions. Over time, silent confidence transforms the way you carry yourself. You become more selective with your words, more intentional with your actions, and more comfortable with your own company. You no longer feel the need to fill every silence or prove every point. There is a quiet assurance in knowing that you are enough without needing anyone else to confirm it. This doesn't mean you ignore feedback or isolate yourself completely, but it means your foundation is internal. You can listen to others without being controlled by them, and you can exist without constantly seeking their approval. This is what makes silent confidence so rare because it requires letting go of the very thing most people depend on, the need to be validated. Emotional control is more powerful than loud dominance. Most people confuse strength with volume, thinking that the louder someone speaks, the more authority they carry. They associate raised voices, aggressive reactions, and forceful behavior with confidence, but in reality, these are often signs of instability. When a person cannot manage their emotions, they try to overpower situations through intensity, believing that dominance will give them control. But true control is not about overpowering others, it is about mastering yourself. The person who can remain composed under pressure, who doesn't react impulsively, and who chooses their response instead of being driven by emotion, holds a level of power that cannot be easily challenged. Loud dominance seeks to control the environment, while emotional control stabilizes the individual, making them unaffected by external chaos. When someone lacks emotional control, their behavior becomes predictable. They react quickly to criticism, get triggered by small provocations, and often reveal their weaknesses without realizing it. This makes them easy to manipulate because anyone who understands their emotional triggers can influence their actions. On the other hand, a person with emotional control becomes difficult to read. They don't give immediate reactions, they don't expose their internal state, and they don't allow others to dictate how they feel. This unpredictability creates a psychological advantage. People become cautious around them, unsure of how they will respond, and that uncertainty shifts the power dynamic. Instead of trying to dominate the situation, they quietly command it by maintaining composure. There is also a deeper level of respect associated with emotional control. People may fear loud dominance in the moment, but that fear is temporary and often mixed with resentment. It comes from intimidation, not admiration. Emotional control, however, earns a different kind of response. When someone remains calm in difficult situations, handles conflict without aggression, and maintains clarity under pressure, it signals strength on a deeper level. It shows that they are not easily shaken, that they don't rely on external circumstances to remain stable, and that they have a strong internal foundation. This kind of presence naturally commands respect because it is rare and difficult to replicate. It cannot be faked for long, and it becomes evident in how a person consistently behaves over time. Another important aspect of emotional control is the ability to think clearly. When emotions take over, logic is often pushed aside. Decisions become reactive rather than intentional, and actions are driven by temporary feelings rather than long-term outcomes. Loud dominance thrives in these moments of emotional intensity, where the goal is to win the argument or assert control immediately. But emotional control allows you to step back, assess the situation, and respond in a way that aligns with your goals. You are not trying to win every moment. You are focused on the bigger picture. This strategic mindset gives you an edge because you are not wasting energy on unnecessary conflicts or impulsive reactions. You choose when to engage, when to withdraw, and when to remain silent, and each choice is deliberate. Emotional control also creates a sense of stability that influences those around you. In environments where others are reactive, anxious, or aggressive, the person who remains calm becomes a point of balance. Their presence can de escalate tension without effort, simply because they are not contributing to the chaos. This kind of influence is subtle but powerful. It doesn't rely on force or authority, yet it shapes the behavior of others. People begin to adjust their tone, their reactions, and their approach in response to your calmness. This is a form of leadership that doesn't need to be announced because it is felt rather than imposed. Loud dominance tries to control others directly, while emotional control influences them indirectly through consistency and composure. Over time, emotional control strengthens your sense of self. You become less dependent on external triggers, less reactive to opinions, and more grounded in your own mindset. Situations that once caused frustration or anger lose their impact because you no longer give them that power. This doesn't mean you stop feeling emotions, but it means you are no longer controlled by them. You experience them without being consumed, and you express them without losing clarity. This level of control changes how you move through the world. You are no longer chasing dominance or trying to assert yourself loudly because you understand that real power is quiet, steady, and rooted in self-mastery. Detaching from approval is one of the most difficult shifts a person can make because from an early age, most people are conditioned to seek it. Approval becomes a form of safety. When others agree with you, praise you, or validate your choices, it creates a sense of comfort and belonging. But that comfort comes at a cost. The more you rely on approval, the more you start shaping your behavior around it. You begin filtering your thoughts, adjusting your actions, and even suppressing parts of your personality just to maintain that acceptance. Over time, you lose clarity about who you actually are because your identity becomes a reflection of what others respond positively to. This is where power starts to slip away, not in a dramatic way, but slowly, through small compromises that add up. You are no longer acting freely, you are reacting to expectations. When you detach from approval, you disrupt this entire pattern. You stop measuring your worth based on how others respond to you, and you begin to define it internally. This doesn't mean you become careless or completely ignore feedback, but it means your decisions are no longer controlled by the need to be liked. There is a difference between awareness and dependence. Awareness allows you to understand how others perceive you, while dependence forces you to conform to it. Detachment creates space between these two, giving you the ability to observe without being influenced. This is where real power begins, because your actions are no longer tied to external validation. You move based on your own standards, your own values, and your own direction without constantly seeking permission. One of the most noticeable changes that comes with detachment is the way you handle rejection and criticism. When you are attached to approval, rejection feels personal. It feels like a direct attack on your identity, which triggers emotional reactions and self-doubt. You start questioning your worth, overanalyzing situations, and trying to fix yourself to regain acceptance. But when you detach, rejection becomes information rather than judgment. You can look at it objectively, understand it, and decide whether it matters or not. This shift removes the emotional weight from other people's opinions. They no longer have the same influence over your state of mind, which makes you more stable and less reactive. You are not constantly adjusting yourself to fit into someone else's expectations. Detachment also changes how people perceive you. When someone is constantly seeking approval, it is often visible in their behavior. They over-explain, they try too hard to impress, and they become overly agreeable. This signals a lack of self-assurance, even if they are trying to appear confident. On the other hand, when you are detached, your behavior becomes more natural and grounded. You don't feel the need to prove yourself, and you don't chase validation. This creates a sense of independence that people can feel. It shifts the dynamic because now you are not trying to win approval, and that makes others more aware of you. There is a quiet confidence in not needing to be liked, and that alone changes how you are treated. Another layer of power comes from the freedom that detachment provides. When you are no longer seeking approval, your decisions become clearer. You are not second guessing yourself based on how others might react. You are not delaying actions because you are waiting for validation. This clarity allows you to move faster and with more certainty. You trust your own judgment, which reduces hesitation and builds momentum. Over time, this creates a strong sense of self reliance. You realize that you don't need constant reassurance to move forward, and that realization reinforces your confidence. It becomes a cycle where independence strengthens belief, and belief strengthens independence. Detaching from approval also protects your energy. Constantly trying to meet expectations can be exhausting. It requires you to be aware of how you are perceived at all times, which creates mental pressure. You are always adjusting, always monitoring, and always trying to maintain a certain image. This drains your focus and limits your ability to invest energy in things that actually matter. When you detach, that energy is redirected. Instead of focusing on how you are being perceived, you focus on what you are building, what you are improving, and what you actually care about. This shift increases productivity and deepens your sense of purpose. You are no longer scattered across different expectations. You are aligned with your own direction. Over time, this detachment reshapes your entire mindset. You become more comfortable with being misunderstood because you no longer rely on others to define you. You accept that not everyone will agree with you, and you stop trying to control their perception. This acceptance removes a significant amount of pressure. You are not trying to manage how everyone sees you, which allows you to exist more freely. Your confidence becomes quieter but stronger because it is not dependent on constant reinforcement. It is built on self trust, consistency, and a clear understanding of your own values. This is what makes detachment so powerful because it removes the need for external approval and replaces it with something far more stable and enduring. Scarcity of attention creates intimidation because attention is one of the most valuable currencies in human interaction. Most people give it away too easily without realizing the impact it has on how they are perceived. They respond instantly, they overengage, they try to stay present in every conversation, and they make themselves constantly available. At first, this may seem like confidence or social ease, but over time, it reduces their value. When your attention is always accessible, it becomes expected rather than appreciated. People stop seeing it as something meaningful because there is no effort required to receive it. This is where scarcity changes everything. When your attention is limited, intentional, and not easily given, it automatically becomes more valuable. People start noticing when they have it and questioning when they don't, which shifts the dynamic in a subtle but powerful way. Scarcity does not mean ignoring people or acting distant without reason. It means being selective with where your focus goes. When you are not constantly reacting to everything around you, your presence becomes more controlled. You are not pulled into every conversation, every distraction, or every emotional situation. Instead, you choose when to engage and when to withdraw. This creates a sense of unpredictability. People cannot assume they will always have your attention, and that uncertainty makes them more aware of your presence. It also forces them to invest more effort when interacting with you because they recognize that your attention is not guaranteed. This is where intimidation begins to form, not through aggression, but through controlled availability. There is also a psychological effect tied to limited attention. When something is scarce, people naturally assign more value to it. This applies to time, resources, and especially attention. When you are not constantly available, People begin to wonder what occupies your focus. They become curious about your priorities, your mindset, and your standards. This curiosity often leads to respect because it suggests that you have something important enough to focus on. On the other hand, when someone is always available, it can signal a lack of direction or purpose. It suggests that they have nothing more important demanding their attention, which reduces the perceived value of their time. Scarcity reverses this perception by creating the impression that your attention is directed towards something meaningful, even if others don't fully understand what that is. Another aspect of attention scarcity is how it influences communication. When you are selective with your attention, your words naturally become more impactful. You are not speaking just to fill silence or maintain engagement. You speak when you have something to add, which makes people listen more carefully. Your silence becomes just as important as your words because it creates space and tension in conversations. People start paying attention to your reactions, your pauses, and your expressions because they are not constantly receiving feedback from you. This shift makes your presence feel more controlled and deliberate, which can be perceived as intimidating. It is not about being unapproachable, but about not being easily predictable. Scarcity of attention also protects your energy and focus. When you are constantly engaging with others, you are dividing your attention across multiple directions. This can lead to mental fatigue and reduced clarity. By limiting where your attention goes, you preserve your ability to think clearly and act intentionally. You are not overwhelmed by unnecessary interactions, and you are not reacting to every external stimulus. This creates a sense of calm and stability, which others can feel. In environments where people are constantly seeking attention and reacting impulsively, the person who remains focused and composed stands out immediately. Their controlled presence contrasts with the surrounding noise, making them appear more grounded and, in some cases, intimidating. Over time, this controlled use of attention reshapes how others interact with you. People become more mindful of how they approach you, more deliberate in what they say, and more aware of your reactions. They recognize that your attention is not automatic, which changes their behavior. This does not come from force or authority, but from the natural response to scarcity. When something is not easily accessible, it gains significance. Your attention becomes something that is noticed when given and questioned when withheld. This dynamic creates a subtle form of influence where you are not trying to control others, but your presence naturally affects how they behave. As this pattern continues, your sense of self becomes less dependent on external interactions. You are not seeking constant engagement to feel validated or occupied. You become comfortable with directing your attention inward, focusing on your own priorities, and maintaining your own pace. This independence reinforces the scarcity because you are not giving your attention away out of habit or insecurity. You are choosing where it goes, which makes it more intentional and more valuable. The intimidation that comes from this is not aggressive or forced, but it is noticeable. It comes from the fact that you are not easily accessible, not easily influenced, and not easily understood, which creates a presence that people respect, question, and approach with caution. Clarity of purpose eliminates insecurity because most insecurity is not rooted in lack of ability, but in lack of direction. When a person is unsure of what they want, what they stand for, or where they are going, their mind begins to search for guidance externally. They look at other people, compare themselves constantly, and adjust their behavior based on what seems acceptable or successful in the moment. This creates confusion because there is no fixed standard to measure against. One day they feel confident, the next day they feel inadequate, not because their abilities changed, but because their reference point keeps shifting. Without a clear purpose, Every opinion matters. Every comparison feels personal, and every setback feels like a reflection of their worth rather than a temporary situation. When clarity of purpose is established, this entire dynamic begins to shift. A clear purpose acts as a filter, helping you decide what deserves your attention and what does not. You are no longer reacting to everything around you because you have a defined direction that guides your choices. This reduces mental noise. Instead of overthinking every move or questioning every decision, you start aligning your actions with your purpose. That alignment creates a sense of stability. You know why you are doing something, which makes it easier to commit to it, even when it becomes difficult. This consistency reduces doubt because you are not constantly changing paths based on external influences. Insecurity often grows in the space where uncertainty exists. When you are unsure about your path, every delay feels like failure, and every obstacle feels like a sign that you are not capable. But when you have clarity, obstacles are no longer personal. They are simply part of the process. You expect challenges because you understand that any meaningful direction comes with resistance. This expectation changes your emotional response. Instead of reacting with self-doubt, you respond with adjustment. You look for solutions rather than questioning your worth. This shift is subtle but powerful because it separates your identity from your circumstances. You are no longer defining yourself by temporary outcomes, but by your long-term direction. Another important effect of clarity is the reduction of comparison. When you don't know what you are working toward, it is easy to measure yourself against others. You see someone ahead in a certain area and assume you are behind, without considering whether their path is even relevant to yours. This creates unnecessary pressure and feeds insecurity. But when your purpose is clear, comparison loses its influence. You are not trying to match someone else's journey because you are focused on your own. You recognize that different people have different directions, timelines, and priorities. This understanding allows you to stay focused without feeling threatened by other people's progress. Your attention shifts from what others are doing to what you need to do. Clarity of purpose also strengthens decision making. Insecurity often shows up as hesitation, second guessing, and fear of making the wrong choice. This happens because there is no clear framework to evaluate decisions. Every option feels equally uncertain, which leads to overthinking and delay. But when your purpose is defined, decisions become simpler. You can ask a single question: does this align with my direction or not? This clarity reduces hesitation because you are not trying to satisfy multiple conflicting expectations. You are choosing based on a consistent standard. Over time, this builds confidence because you start trusting your own judgment. You see the results of your decisions and learn from them, which reinforces your sense of control. There is also a deeper level of identity that forms when your purpose is clear. You begin to understand not just what you are doing, but who you are in relation to it. This creates a stronger sense of self, which naturally reduces insecurity. You are not trying to fit into different roles or meet different expectations depending on the situation. You have a consistent identity that guides your behavior across different environments. This consistency makes you more grounded because you are not constantly adjusting yourself to match external standards. You are acting in alignment with your own values and direction, which creates internal stability. Over time, clarity of purpose changes how you handle uncertainty itself. You become more comfortable with not having immediate answers because you trust the direction you are moving in. You understand that not everything needs to be figured out instantly, as long as you are progressing towards something meaningful. This reduces anxiety because you are not trying to control every detail. You are focused on maintaining direction rather than achieving perfection. This mindset allows you to move forward with confidence, even in situations where outcomes are unclear. Your sense of security comes from knowing where you are going, not from knowing exactly how everything will unfold. Unpredictability makes people respect and, at times, fear you because it disrupts the patterns most people rely on to feel in control. Human behavior is often built on expectation. People observe, analyze, and quickly form assumptions about how someone will react in different situations. Once they believe they understand you, they adjust their behavior accordingly. They know what to say, how far they can go, and what kind of reaction they can expect. This predictability gives them a sense of comfort and control, even if they are not consciously aware of it. But when you become unpredictable in your responses, that comfort disappears. People can no longer rely on their assumptions, and that uncertainty forces them to approach you differently. Unpredictability is not about being erratic or inconsistent without reason. It is about not reacting in ways that are easily anticipated, especially in emotionally charged situations. Most people are predictable when they are triggered. They react with anger when disrespected, with desperation when ignored, and with defensiveness when challenged. These patterns make them easy to read and, more importantly, easy to manipulate. When someone knows exactly how you will respond, they can push your buttons with precision. But when your reactions are controlled and not immediately obvious, it becomes difficult for others to influence you. They cannot provoke you as easily, and they cannot predict your next move, which shifts the balance of power in subtle but significant ways. There is also a psychological tension that comes with unpredictability. When people cannot fully understand your behavior, they begin to pay closer attention. They analyze your actions, your words, and even your silence, trying to find patterns that make sense. This heightened attention naturally increases your presence in their mind. You become someone they think about more, not because you are trying to demand attention, but because they cannot easily categorize you. This inability to define you creates a sense of intrigue, but also caution. People become more careful around you because they are unsure of the outcome of their actions. This caution is often interpreted as respect, but it is rooted in the uncertainty you create. Unpredictability also protects your boundaries. When your behavior is consistent in a way that others can easily map, they begin to test limits. They push slightly, observe your reaction, and then push further if there are no consequences. Over time, this can lead to a gradual erosion of your boundaries because people learn how much they can get away with. But when your responses are not easily predictable, it becomes risky for them to test you. They cannot be sure how you will respond, which makes them more hesitant to cross certain lines. This does not require aggression or confrontation. It simply requires that your reactions are not automatic or emotionally driven. You choose when and how to respond, which makes your behavior less accessible to manipulation. Another important aspect of unpredictability is the control it reflects. People often associate unpredictability with chaos, but controlled unpredictability is the opposite. It shows that you are not operating on impulse, but on awareness. You are not reacting based on what others expect, but based on what you decide in the moment. This level of control is rare because most people fall into habitual patterns without realizing it. When someone breaks those patterns, it stands out immediately. It signals that they are thinking independently rather than following predictable emotional scripts. This independence creates a sense of strength because it suggests that they are not easily influenced or controlled by external factors. Unpredictability also enhances the impact of your actions. When your behavior is consistent in a predictable way, your actions lose their effect over time. People become accustomed to them, and they no longer carry the same weight. But when your actions are less frequent and less predictable, they gain significance. A response, a decision, or even a moment of silence can have a stronger impact because it is not expected. This makes your presence feel more deliberate. You are not constantly reacting or engaging, so when you do, it is noticed. This selective engagement increases the perceived importance of your behavior, which contributes to the respect others have for you.